Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge, episode 132, take 2. Sticky buttons today, along with everything. Today's just one of those days, where you just want to start smashing things and just keep smashing until you run out of daylight, and then you go down to the hardware store and get a powerful flashlight so you can smash things in the dark. So we're just going to have to do a real quick one today. I've got 7 shows or something I have to get edited, and I think I've done one of them. It's just one of these days where I love these right angles, and they're the sort of the center of our week, but they are taking enormous amounts of my time, and the worst of it is 80% of this work that I'm doing is stuff that I don't have to do. Somebody has to do it, and it just doesn't have to be me. So, yeah. Anyway, we didn't do a Stratosphere Lounge last week, so I thought we'd just do a quick one this week. Given the the news, the level of news that comes in every single day, I just don't know what to do. It's just there's just so much. There's so much news. There's more. Somebody said, it might have been Winston Churchill or somebody said, some certain country produced more news than they can consume. I think that's pretty much it. Anyway, so we're just going to dive right into our questions, and our first question is from Scott Tomasky, who said, Bill, you've said time and again that one of the benefits of Trump winning is that we'll have a press corps again. I respectfully disagree. In opposing Trump, they are given to incessant lying, just like they're given to incessant lying to prop up Obama and Hillary. Is it better we have a media that's lying to bring down the president, or is it better to have a media that's lying to prop up the president? Or do you see it differently? I honestly don't see one as being better than the other, hence my disagreement. I'd much rather have a press corps that's determined to destroy the president, no matter what party he's in. Because if you have somebody whose goal is to bring down the president, I actually, to be perfectly honest with you, I kind of think that's the purpose of the media. I think that's the actual purpose of the news media is to destroy politicians. That's what I would like them to do. I'd like them to be the T cells in the bloodstream. I'd like them to go after everything. And if there's the slightest bit of corruption or cancer in that cell, and I'd like to have it just be destroyed by exposing it to the antiseptic of sunlight. Just get it out in the light where people can see it. I spent a lot of the time today and yesterday and also tomorrow, and a lot of this, where am I going with this? There's just so much on my mind right now. I'm sorry about getting off the question. I've just been wrestling with something all day, and I don't really want to get into all the details of it right now. But in a short, if a person who's committed these kind of crimes, there are certainly 3 felonies that she's committed, because I can read a sentence. I can read an English sentence, and I know what she's guilty of. And if the Department of Justice is corrupted and has been corrupted for 8 years, and if the FBI is corrupted, and I watch Comey squirming under these questions and say, I don't recall this, and doing his level best to be like the good Boy Scout. He's like being a Boy Scout. The good FBI man. I'd like to answer all of your questions, Representative. I'd love to give you the full answer. I want this to be the most transparent hearing in the history of the Republic, and I don't buy it anymore, Jim. I did at first. When I first watched the whole thing, I thought you were a good man who was either trying to send us a signal or were trying to, I don't know. But the more we see of you, the more I think Jim Comey is just another, he's either scared or he's bought. He claims none of these decisions were made in advance, and I've heard Chavez and Gowdy give him questions that are unanswerable questions. They're just simply show-stopping questions. And I slowly came to realize that no, he's as guilty as anyone else. He's just a better liar. He's got a more got a more sympathetic sort of a, like I said, kind of a Boy Scout sort of, clean G-man kind of look that makes you want to believe him, makes people like me want to believe him anyway. But he's not. He's just lying. None of this was determined in advance. Or really, the meeting with Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton had nothing to do with the decision. Really, the fact that you had witnesses sitting in on testimony, no, nothing to do with it. Really, that 5 immunity agreements were given out and no prosecutions, and not only no prosecutions, no testimony from the people that we gave immunity to. They didn't even testify. They took the 5th, or they didn't show up, or they just, forgot, couldn't recall. And these immunity agreements not only are applied to the immunity, but they allow for the destruction of evidence. That the FBI makes a deal that says that in exchange for this immunity, we allow you to destroy this piece of evidence. I don't even know if I'm going to take questions tonight, to be honest with you folks. This is probably much more important. I'm sure you'd rather hear about this anyway. This social compact is a very simple thing, really. It's an old idea. It predates America, but it's relatively new compared to human history. And the idea is that the governed, that'd be us, suckers and chumps, agree to be governed by our betters and our masters because under the condition that they have to obey the same laws that we do. That's the essence of the social compact, really, in a nutshell. We agree to be governed by people who are our equals and legal equals and our certainly our moral equals and all of this. They're supposed to be our equals. They're supposed to be subject to the same laws that we are. We send representatives to Washington to do the work of the people, and they are in fact representatives of the people. That's how it's supposed to work. They're not representatives of the people. They're not representatives of anything anymore. They when a person with the degree of felonies on her record as Hillary Clinton, it's been a 30-year record of felonies, when after 25 or 30 years of being married to a rapist and destroying the women who came out against being raped by this monster, and when the Justice Department declines to press charges against the most serious security leak in living memory, I think it surpasses Snowden, who at least has a warrant out for him. I know for a fact that they're just laughing at us, and and people would, if you're going to pay attention to something that a guy said on a bus 11 years ago, and that's going to cost him the election. So while Trump said something on a bus essentially in private 11 years ago, and we have footage now of Bill Clinton putting his hand between this woman's knees and having her remove her hand, and all of this, you just realize this is not our government anymore. It's not our government, and therefore I don't feel any particular allegiance to it. I don't think it has any. I don't think it has legitimacy. I disliked everything about Barack Obama. But I remember when he was elected, I said, well, I wish him well. I hope I'm wrong about him. Turns out I wasn't wrong about him, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and he was elected. We knew he had a headwind, or rather a tailwind from the press and everything, but he was elected. There's no question that the American people chose him over McCain, and I think they chose him over Romney as well. I'm not even saying that Hillary Clinton couldn't beat Donald Trump in a clean race, but it's not a clean race. The press is, how many times do we have to make this mistake where we're going to go and agree to presidential debates to be moderated by these progressives? I mean, how stupid are we? Again and again and again. I thought we'd never see anything worse than what we saw with Candy Crowley last year, and Candy Crowley was just a warm-up act for what we saw this year. Moderators arguing with Trump about whether or not this is a psychological move on the part of a government. It's like, who are you? And then behind all of this is this monster, this woman, this monster. So for those of you feminists who feel like you're going to have the first woman president, you're going to get it, I think. And you're also going to get the first woman to collapse the government of the United States, or you're going to get the first woman to go to jail as president. Because I can tell you that what is going on now is not going to continue, and I can also tell you that if this woman was this corrupt prior to becoming the most powerful person in the world, I don't imagine she's suddenly going to become more modest in her larceny. Barack Obama was an incompetent, narcissistic communist. Hillary Clinton isn't incompetent, and she's not really narcissistic in the same way. She's effective. She's an effective, extremely enraged, very ill physically and mentally, I would say, bitter, angry person who doesn't care about anything other than, I think, than getting revenge on her husband and on the nation. And that's what we're going to likely elect. I don't mean to put anybody's feelings down, but when the candidate that we were rooting for, forget the remarks. I mean, the remarks are the remarks. There's nothing you can do about that. He might have come out and told us in advance that, I did some salty talk back in the day, done something to brace us for it. But no, as always, they thought they can get away with, no one's going to know. But that's not what drives me nuts about what I've seen with Trump. What drives me nuts about what I've seen with Trump happened in the first debate, where he was pounding her to the ground. He was knocking the stuffing out of her. And then she said, maybe Donald Trump doesn't have as much money as he says he does. And from that point forward, all this man could do was to talk about his wealth, and it's like dealing with a 4-year-old. I mean, I'm sorry, but it is. If you are that emotionally incapable of dealing with these kind of attacks, you don't belong there. If Hillary Clinton can just say, I don't think he's worth as much money as he says he is, and he's got small hands too. Have you noticed that? My understanding is that Donald Trump is still hassling somebody who said he had small hands 20 years ago. When the candidate can't. If I say to you, let's say you're running for president and I'm your campaign advisor, and I tell you that despite the fact that you are very, very fond of the color blue, your opponent is going to tell you that your favorite color is red. It's a trap. They're going to try and get you to say this, and they know it bothers you because we know how much you like blue, but they're going to say that your favorite color is red, so it's coming, it's a trap, watch out for it, and for God's sakes, don't fall into it because it's utterly meaningless. And you go out there and start pounding the stuffing out of him, and somebody says, I've heard Bill Whittle's favorite color is red. And then I spend the next hour trying to convince you that it's blue. I don't deserve to be president because you cannot function in the world on this level with that kind of an Achilles heel weakness. So, there we go. Now, I know everybody thinks I'm really down and depressed, and certainly I'm not in a high energy mood. I was this morning. I had a lot of frustrations just on the schedule today trying to keep up with all this stuff. However, I have had some very profound thoughts about this entire situation, and I'll just give you the short form about them, and then maybe we'll take a question or two and call it a night because I have to get back to work. I'm going to just go ahead for a minute, and again, let me be crystal clear on this. I don't want any mistake about this. I'm going to go out and vote for Donald Trump, and I'm going to go vote for him no matter what the polls say. I'm going to go out and vote for him because that's the only thing I can do to stop Hillary Clinton. So I'm going to do it regardless of where he is, what the polls say, any of that stuff. But let's just say that right now it looks pretty tough hill to climb when you're down significantly this late in the race. So let's just assume for the argument that Hillary Clinton wins this thing. If she wins, if this woman is elected, who simply walks away from felonies because she's powerful, and if, in fact, the reason she walked away from the email scandal, and the reason that Comey was bought off, I've been saying this from the beginning of the scandal. I've been saying this from the beginning of the scandal. That's not just Hillary's problem. Who do you think contacted his Secretary of State on this unsecure server? Who do you think? Of course Barack Obama knew about this unsecure server. He sent her hundreds, if not thousands, of emails to this unsecure server. He's as complicit in this as she is. And I think what happened was Bill Clinton went into Loretta Lynch and basically said, not that she was ever going to get prosecuted anyway, but basically said, listen, if you take Hillary down, Obama's going with her. If Hillary goes down for this, Obama's going with her. We've got all the evidence of him knowing about the server. We've got tape recordings, or we got this or that of him being aware that it's unsecure. So if Hillary's going down, then the president's going down too. And okay, that's it. I am going to do a firewall in here somewhere. I got one I wanted to do on this Trump thing, but it's just every day goes by, the story gets colder on the tape of him. But I'm going to do a firewall. I think I'll probably call it Dear FBI. Basically, what that's going to be about is pretty simply this. I'm one of those kids that grew up on the FBI TV show with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., and I grew up with just barely caught the end of the Untouchables. And when I asked my father what that term meant, it meant that people who were untouchable because that they could not be bought, they were beyond corruption. That the FBI is an agency that's beyond corruption. You cannot corrupt the FBI. The FBI is made of people who place the security and the value and the honor of the country above anything, above money, above intimidation, above threats. They're G-men and they're FBI men. And I know I must be just a sap, but I'm just one of those saps that happen to believe all that stuff. We find now that it's just not true. We find that the FBI is just carrying water to make excuses for what they knew from the beginning is a absolutely felonious and treasonous violation of laws and guidelines and protocols, and they just they took a fall. This has got to be what it's like when it's a bit like was it the Chicago Black Sox, where the Chicago team, and I want to say it was around 1909, rigged the World Series, lost it on purpose in order to make money. And Shoeless Joe Jackson was one of those team members who apparently was one of the very few who didn't want to do this. But this kid comes out with a broken heart after finding out that that the Chicago Black Sox threw the World Series in order to make a little bit of money. And this crying kid comes up to Shoeless Joe Jackson and says, "Say it ain't so, Joe. Say it ain't so. Tell me this is not true. Tell me that this can't be true. It can't be true." But it is true. So say it ain't so, Jim. You say you don't want to be judged as weasels. You are weasels, and I know this to be a fact because I've seen your assistant. I forget his name now, but when his assistant, the assistant director, was there, we got to the guts of the. And there is a bright lining in this. But when he was questioned about these 302s, these they didn't record. They didn't actually record the interview. That in itself is shocking. But they did like a synopsis of the interview, and after the interview report of the interview, and my understanding is a Form 302, and Shavitz, in one of the great moments in American history, basically brought these guys in under threat of subpoena and said to them, "We want to see all the 302s, not the ones you think we should see. This is the Congress of the United States of America. You work for us. We don't work for you. We want to see all of the 302s. We want to see all of them. And we shouldn't have to subpoena the FBI to get information that we are entitled by, not only entitled by law to have, but required by law to oversee." And the FBI says, "Well, we didn't want to make your life more difficult, Mr. Gowdy. We just wanted to give you the relevant 302s." And Gowdy says, "I don't want you to make my life easy. My job is not supposed to be easy. You don't have any any right to tell me that you're keeping information from me because you want me to have an easier job of the oversight committee. It's just a gigantic scam. So I'm going to do this firewall called Dear FBI, and I'm going to address it to the FBI in general. And I'm going to tell them what this has cost the country, not just what it's cost us or what it's cost Republicans or what it's cost the FBI even, what it's cost the country. Because half of this country, Mr. Comey, hates the FBI. Half of this country has always been against law enforcement. Half of this country has always felt that half of this country now is socialist and communist and left-leaning, and the FBI has always been their enemy. It was always the FBI that uncovered the communists. It was always the FBI that stopped the leaks and pronounced all of it. The FBI was the untouchables. They were incorruptible. And now, because of James Comey and the other people involved in this, you're not only not incorruptible, you're actually a joke to me now. I remember Chaffetz. Sorry, you're kind of a joke to me. Shortly after Comey's first announcement, somebody said something was going on overseas, some kind of an accident or some kind of a thing, and President Obama had promised that the FBI would be dispatched to help out, and I just laughed. I didn't even realize it until the FBI. Okay, so, the Justice Department is the law enforcement department of the United States of America. There's half of the country that can't stand law enforcement, and this is the side that the law enforcement officials are defending. They are defending crimes and treason on the part of progressives, and it's the progressives who hate them and want them to go away. So if you are an FBI man or know anybody who's in the FBI, I just would say to you, your agency is not just tarnished, your agency is destroyed with the few people in the country left who supported you and have supported you for their entire existence of the FBI. There are people like me who always have felt that the FBI was here to protect the American people from crime, foreign crime, domestic crime. That's what their job was. And now we find out, without any question, by the way, we're not as stupid as you may think we are. Mr. G-Min, you've not just disappointed America, you've pretty much destroyed America's faith in the last part of the government that we had any faith in. The military, I put in generally that same category, that military is being eroded as quickly as possible. They're not firing the real warriors in the military. They're just making it morally, it makes them morally incapable of remaining in the military. They're passing policies that actual warriors and actual patriots simply cannot abide by. So the actual war fighters and the actual heroes and the patriots are leaving the military because it's unbearable to stay. So it's my fond hope that somebody in the FBI is watching this program and has always been watching this program, and wouldn't surprise me. Well, of course, wouldn't surprise me if they weren't either. But you have not just disappointed us. You've broken our hearts, and you've broken our trust in the last, the last sticks of government left that we had any faith in. It's gone. So if the untouchables are touchable, and the president is a felon, and the president is a demonstrative liar that you can prove on any number of indications that she's standing there and lying to our face, this psychotic woman. If this psychotic is elected, then there's no Department of Justice, and that means there's no justice. There's no FBI, which means that, the FBI will go after who they want to, when they want to, and if they don't want to go after somebody, then they won't. And if it turns out the person they're going after is well connected to Democrats, then that person will walk. And if the person is connected to Republicans, they will do what happened to Dinesh D'Souza, which means they take an incredibly steep legal penalty, and that's the world we'll be living in. That's going to be the world. All of this is really terrible, and then I'll just tell you where I think the terrible stops here. It's just a word I don't think I've used before, but I'm going to use it now. I'm going to use it a lot in the future. If Gadsden Barb just in the live comments section said, hearing it put this way makes me wonder, what is our breaking point? Barb, we're past our breaking point. This is a classic example of the frog boiling in warm water, but we're well past the breaking point. Barack Obama has committed multiple lies, and by communicating with his Secretary of State on an unsecured server, he has treasonously sacrificed the security of this country. Which is not a bug for him, that's a feature. So, what does it leave us with? Well, if Hillary Clinton is elected, look, I've never been one of those people who said that Barack Obama is not my president. I'm an American. He was elected. He is my president. I don't like him. I don't like his policies, but he's my president. This is different. This is different because this person is legally disqualified from being the president. And the only reason she is going to be president is because she's got enough dirt on enough people. So here's what I've been thinking about quite a lot lately. We've been doing political messaging, and we talk about, well, where's our next candidate going to be, and what are we going to do with this, and how can we get together and do that, and on and on and on and on and on. And it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Politics is not going to work. Because we've seen it. The reason it's not going to work is because if the press controls the information that the American people get, then there is simply no way to win. And if the pop culture is determined to demonize half of the country at the expense of the other half, then there's very, very few people with the moral courage to go with what they believe in, and they'll all go with the social proof and so on. It's this iron triangle of the control of the media in New York, the control of the culture in Hollywood, and the control of politics in Washington. And so these are some of the thoughts that I've had about this situation lately. We have said from the beginning that politics is downstream of culture, and as soon as we say politics is downstream of culture, the first thing we do is try and find a way to make politics independent of culture. We've done it 3 election cycles now, and I don't think that's worked out for us very well. So I started thinking about this idea of a revolution in terms of what is the breaking point, Barb? Right? What's the breaking point? At what point do you say this government does not belong to me anymore or to the American people? It doesn't even belong to progressives anymore, you see. I know progressives are happy about it, but if the president is capable of doing whatever he or she wants to and breaking whatever laws he or she wants to, and the entire force of the government will support that lawlessness, then this is not only not my government, it's not their government either, it's not the United States government, it is not the constitutional government, and it doesn't have any legitimacy. That's all there is to it as far as I'm concerned. This is different than politics. You can make that position with Barack Obama, and I never made that position with Bill Clinton or anybody else. This is different. Because we didn't have the FBI involved in the election in 2008, and we didn't have the IRS involved, and we didn't have the Justice Department involved in the election and determining who gets elected in 2008. So, what does that mean? And then I realized that a lot of the things I've been thinking about over the years are suddenly gelling, and they're coming together for a specific reason, I think. It's probably the drone. And the reason I think that all of these things I've been discussing and thinking about are coming together is basically this reason. First of all, one of the insights I had recently, not claiming it's unique, I just never heard anyone else talk about it, is this. This revolution against this government is not going to be a violent revolution, or at the very least it's not going to be openly violent. There's not going to be, we keep thinking, at what point will we take our rifles into the street and fight the government? It's never going to reach that point. It will never reach that point. We're not allowed to bomb ISIS without people having conniption fits. The idea of A-10s rolling in on a target in Santa Monica or Ogden, Utah, for that matter, and that surviving on the evening news is not foreseeable for the next 20 or 30 years. I do not see that happening. I cannot imagine a world where the Army or the National Guard opens fire on American civilians who are simply either protesting or simply, expressing their political views. I do not see it. I just don't see it will happen. I'm glad we've still got the guns, but I just don't think that's how it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen the way it's done in the past with the Nazis and the Soviets, but they had actual physical power to back them up. We just have intimidation, and they needed physical power because it took a lot to move people in those days. Today, we're so comfortable that all they have to do is threaten to take away our comfort, and we'll do pretty much anything they ask us to do. So we don't complain about them spending $4 trillion a year, and we don't complain about a $20 trillion debt, and we don't complain about $80 trillion in debt around the world. We pretend like nothing's going to happen, and we don't want to lose our comfort, so we just continue to take it. But the American Revolution, well, the first one anyway, was fought with the weapons of a first-wave agricultural society. They were fought with muskets and occasionally pitchforks, swords, horses, and cannon. And that's what the weapons of the agricultural age were, and that's what the revolution was fought with. Later revolutions have been second-wave revolutions, industrial-era revolutions. You get a lot more advanced firepower, and you got better control. You got communication net to some degree. You've got railroads. You've got all that technical stuff. And that was a particularly bloody form of revolution. But now, we are not going to see this on TV. The American people will not tolerate watching Americans gunned down. They'll tolerate just about anything, but it's just not going to happen. I'm telling you. So, the question is, what are the weapons of a revolution today? And I realized that this is a little turn of a phrase that I like very much. I just happen to think it is fundamentally true. It's my entire premise, and that is that we are not in a war of battleships and bayonets now. We're in a war of ideas and narratives and story and truth and influence and intimidation. And it doesn't have to come to machine guns. They know that we've got the guns. They're not stupid enough to do anything to activate that, to make us actually shoot back. They're going to be much more subtle than this. And so then the question becomes, where do we stand in a situation like that? And my response to this is, we're in goddamn great shape. And I'm serious about this. I'm not being facetious here. We are in great shape. All of the time that I've spent studying things like the history, I read the history of the communists, and then I read the czars, I read the history of the Nazis, and I read in-depth studies of Goering and all of them, because I want to understand how a society gets to a society of total fear, where you live in a world where fear is so total and so pervasive that people will literally do anything because they're terrified. And I've studied that procedure pretty carefully. And it's a very simple procedure, and basically what it is you intimidate people, and then when people decide that they would rather not be called a name, or rather not speak up, or rather not do this, or rather not do that, and they stay quiet and they bow their heads, and then they intimidate a little bit more. And every single time that happens, the pressure to bow your head gets higher and higher and higher, and then finally we get to realize that nobody's going to fight back, and then it's over. At that point, then you're just one of these slaves who you can't say anything to your wife because God knows you don't want to say anything detrimental to Comrade Clinton or Comrade Stalin or Comrade whoever. And whenever they get out there and play golf, Hillary Clinton will be the best golfer in the world, and everybody will applaud. She'll get hole-in-one every time. And for people to think that's nuts, it's not nuts. It's not nuts. We're watching people break the law in front of our eyes, not little laws, gigantic laws. We're watching it happen in front of our eyes, and nothing's happening. So what will we do about it? I think this is the big payoff for all of this setup. I had thought, the media, I thought movies, I thought reaching young people, I thought about all these political things for the last 12 years, now 13 years, and now I've come to realize that this is just a last gasp effort to do things the easy way through politics. And politics is downstream of culture, and that means that if we're going to get this country back, because it's gone now, it's gone, if the FBI and the Justice Department and the President and the Secretary of State are co-conspirators in an influence for cash scam, then by every definition of what this country's government ever meant to me meant, it's gone. So what do? Well, I think the first thing we have to do is we have to understand that we have to start from an absolutely blank piece of paper. We have to start from scratch. And we had better give these leftist, progressive, communist, murdering bastard sons of bitches the credit they deserve. They've done it. They took the most free, the most honorable, the friendliest, the most generous, the most successful, hardworking, industrious people in the history of the world and turned them into slaves who don't know the capital of their own country. They did it. They've done it. And if we don't understand that, if we don't start from the position that they have succeeded, they've won, then we're not going to get anywhere. So the first thing we have to understand, I think, is that if this woman is elected, we will have to start a procedure that will take 40 years at the minimum, to reach its conclusion, and that's assuming it's successful. So we have to be prepared for 40 years of work. And I don't mean 40 years of the work we're doing now. I mean 40-year work starting with a blank page. My position on this is going to be essentially this. There are still half of the country that understands these values. We are going to have to assume that everybody at the age of 18 or over has been fatally contaminated by this philosophy, and we're just going to have to write them off. Some of those people are conservative. More of them will become conservative, but we cannot target them. They are just the victims of this brainwashing, and they believe it, and they call themselves socialists, and they think that we're demons and racists and monsters, and we're just wasting time attending to people who are bleeding out as far as their morality is concerned. It's just a bad waste of time in terms of triage. And likewise, we have people who are patriots and get the whole thing, and we don't need to spend a whole lot of attention to that, too, because they're relatively minor wounds that we're walking around with. We have to go to the people we can save, and that means to me we have to start with kids who are probably around 15, 16, 17 years old, and we have to start with them, and we have to do to them what the left did to their parents and grandparents. We have to make it clear that this is the philosophy, and this philosophy is a way of life, and it's a critical way of life, and we have to make them soldiers in the idea. We have to ammo them up. We have to give them the ammunition to beat back this false narrative that the left tells, and then we have to empower them, and we have to make them want to be a part of it. This is a tall order, because everything we do so far to young people is the essential equivalent of getting, Karl Rove in a hoodie, and low-hanging jeans in front of a microphone and try to lay down some fat beats for the kids. That's not how it works. We're going to have to make these ideas so attractive. We're going to have to make them graphically attractive. You're just going to have to take my word for this. I'm not claiming this is the truth, but I am claiming that this is what I am doing about that. We have to understand that the messaging of the future has to look like an Apple ad. I just went to the Apple store today, and it is a different world. It looks like the future. Our messaging has to look like the future. Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA has been terrific, and they've done an awful lot with some money, but they also need some help. They've got the guts, and they've got the organization. They just need a little better arguments. So one of these things that we have to do is we have to go to young people and convince them that this is, number one, the right thing to do, number two, the cool thing to do, and number three, we have to find people with the guts to do it. I was at the University of Minnesota a couple of weeks ago with the young Republicans up in Minnesota, and they had a bridge. There's a bridge at the University of Minnesota, and it consists of about 200 side panels across the river. And everybody gets to paint a sign on one of those panels, and it's this giant mural that goes on for yards and yards, hundreds of yards. And 200 panels or something like that, and the college Republicans painted on one of them, "Build the Wall." And it was immediately defaced, and it was immediately investigated, and then there was, there were all these other, so these kids, and there were, I don't know, 15, 20 of them, more than that, 60, I guess. I just sat in the room and talked to them for an hour, and I told them how proud I was of them, and I told them how rare moral courage is, and how essential moral courage, the courage to disagree with the herd, is. And I genuinely mean it. There's a young woman there who's in charge of the college Republicans. She's getting death threats. She's getting Facebook harassment. She's getting stalkers. She's getting crank calls. She's getting all of it. She's just a girl who went to college and wanted to get an education and loves her country, and she stepped up and became this frickin' warrior, and I respect her enormously. I respect all of these kids enormously. And what we have to do after this election is over is we have to get some serious frickin' resources behind these kids, and I mean real money behind these kids, because they're going to be the actual soldiers that are going to go out there and do this fighting. And then what happens is, believe me, folks, I'm going to get this whole thing boiled down to a 3-minute pitch, the likes of which I've never, ever done in my life. This is going to be the best message I've ever put together, so I'm just kind of shooting it up against the wall and just splattering it around to help focus my mind a little bit. So one thing we have to do is we have to get these kids the message. We have to get them the message. I'm going to be doing 5 videos for Turning Point USA starting right as soon as this week. I'm going down to Irvine this weekend to talk to Turning Point USA guys down there, and I'm going to test out all of these 5 arguments, these 5 videos live, and then I'm going to do them. And by the way, since I got nothing but time to kill here, I was talking with Charlie Kirk, who wants to do the videos, and we're trying to figure out what to do them on. He was talking about safe spaces. Should we do them on safe space, free speech, whatever? And after having been to a few colleges and having watched this for several years, I said to him, Charlie, I honestly think, to be perfectly honest with you, that the reason that college kids and young kids call themselves socialists and vote for Bernie is because they don't have the slightest idea of economics and they've never heard any of the fundamental facts of economics. And I'm not talking about economics in the sense of, velocity and I'm just talking about the common sense of things of economics. So I'm going to do 5 videos. I'm going to do money, socialism, capitalism, corporations, and government. And by the time these 5 are done, they're going to be 3 minutes each, 3 or 4 minutes tops each. By the time these things are understood and finished, kids will understand why capitalism is the moral good. It can't just be the financial good. It can't just be the smart thing to do. These kids have been raised as precious snowflakes. We have to look at the field as the field is. So we have to not only show them that capitalism works and that capitalism is effective and that capitalism gets some nice things, we also have to show them that capitalism is the moral choice, and anything other than capitalism is evil because it robs people of their lives. So there's that. So we got to ammo up these kids. That's number one. The second thing we have to do, and this is one I feel very strongly about, is this. We cannot fly against this news media headwind. We just can't. It's worth 20 points, 25 points at the polls. Think about that. Honestly, you cannot win. The country has never been more. What's a blowout? What is a blowout on a national presidential level? 60-40 maybe? Right? I mean, the press is putting in 20, 30 points of bias into this thing and protecting these people. So what do we do about the press? This is another reason why I'm optimistic, believe it or not, because we have the tools to beat these people. And not only do we have the tools, we understand the tools. Society is changing to our way of life more every day. They become more outdated, more dinosaurs every day. We couldn't even have this discussion 20 years ago, because 20 years ago you never heard of me, and I would have never heard of you. Because if I wanted to talk to you 20 years ago, I would have needed $100 million or more to buy some time or buy a show on a major network, and that probably wasn't going to happen. Even today, you hear people saying, we should have a conservative television network. Nope, that's just obsolete. It's billions of dollars for nothing. Nobody watches TV anymore. I don't. And certainly young people don't. They watch YouTube, and they watch Facebook, and it's pretty much where all their entertainment comes from, and I'm right there with them. So what do we do about the news? Well, the classic example that really put a real electric jolt through me was this business of Hillary on 9/11 when she stumbled into the car. We were told that she left because she was dehydrated, and if we had not seen that video, that's what people would have believed. But she wasn't dehydrated. She collapsed into the car. She's very, very ill. How did we get that video? Was that because CNN was on the job making sure that Hillary Clinton was covered as the Democratic nominee? Of course not. CNN didn't have the footage because they weren't there, and even if they were there and had the footage, CNN wouldn't air it, and neither would any of the other networks. So what do we have to do to change the news media? And the answer is nothing. We cannot change the news media. The news media, as we understand it, is irrevocably destroyed and poisoned by leftism. I had thought for the last 8 years, 12 really, that at some point, some reporter is going to have a conscience and they're going to stand up and if for no other reason than selfishness, try to bring down, these presidents so they can get a Pulitzer Prize. Not true. I've seen two journalists, actually, I think two actual journalists, John Stossel and Cheryl Atkinson. And there's two or three more. But what I realize is these people, if they see the right thing to do, or even if they see the contrary thing to do, let's just say that Cheryl Atkinson has evidence that's impeachable evidence for Barack Obama. Let's just play that out. She has unimpeachable evidence. She's got absolute proof that he was born in Kenya, or she's got something. He still he never regained his U.S. citizenship. Whatever. It is condemning proof that not only hurts him politically, but essentially voids his presidency. And she goes to tell that story. What happens? She'll talk to CBS about it, and CBS will say, we can't run that. Well, why not? Because if you do that, then Barack Obama's going to be impeached. And if that happens, then the goddamn Republicans, these racists and fascists and misogynists, are going to take over. And then the country's going to go to hell. So you can't do it. And they'll tell her to be quiet. And if she quits, then they will suppress. They'll not just not run it. They'll suppress it. It won't see the story anywhere else. You might see it on Cheryl Atkinson's website. I'm just gaming this out, but you get the general idea. And people like you and me are going to howl about it, and we're going to scream, and we're going to email all our friends, and that's not going to do any good either, because they understand that we know. So that's the thing about this Hillary thing. It's not like Hillary doesn't think that we don't know. She knows that we know. She just doesn't think we care. Not even that. She knows that we know, and she knows that we care. She just doesn't think we're going to do anything about it. And so far we haven't. But I think a major part of this revolution is to make every single citizen a journalist. Every single one of us today, with marginal exceptions, every single one of us carries with us all times 24 hours a day HD television cameras with us in our pockets. And the only reason we ever saw Hillary stumble into that car was because two citizens happened to be there with their phones. So we've got to understand that that CNN, ABC, NBC are on their way out, and we have to understand that these new things are on their way in. But the main point of the journalism thing is this, folks. I've learned a lot from this cycle, and here's what I've learned, and it's very simple, really. You don't have to spend too much time thinking about it. In the world today and for the foreseeable future, if it's not on videotape or audio tape, it didn't happen. If it's not on tape and we can't either see it or hear it, especially see it, then it didn't happen. It is as good as not happen. All of the things revealed in Hillary's emails are horrific. Hillary Clinton is known to have said, 5, 6, 7 different books now, to her Secret Service agents, F you, shut the F up, get the F out of my way, land this effing helicopter, again and again and again and again. There's no question about it. Everybody knows it's true, but it's in print. And so nobody cares. Nobody cares. It doesn't score. If we had audio recordings of Hillary saying that, that would hurt her. If we had video recordings of her walking up to the men determined to protect her life and basically her telling them to get the F out of her way and that she doesn't ever want to effing see them again, that would destroy her. But we don't have video. We've just got transcripts. We got words. We got secondhand words. Conversely, if Donald Trump's remarks on the bus had been simply in an article where they were quoted, we wouldn't have anything like this flame up. If Donald Trump hadn't, if we'd not heard Donald Trump's own words, then this would have been a nothing. It's audio, but preferably video, or it doesn't happen. And if we don't understand that aspect of it, we're never going to win again. Look, none of this we have to like. We don't have to like any of it. One of the things we've been guilty of, and one of the reasons we've been losing, and in retrospect we deserve to lose, is because we have been so disgusted by the pop culture that we decided to try running away from the pop culture. But you can't run away from the pop culture, because the pop culture is the sea that we all swim in. It's not a part of the sea. You can't leave the ocean and go to a different part of the ocean. It's still the ocean. It's still salt water. Wherever you go, it's salt water all the way around. And we have basically been fish that decided to swim out of the ocean and just flop around on the land. We've given up the battlefield. We just walked away from it. We can't do that. We have to have cultural references for conservatives to stick to, and we win these arguments. Just parenthetically going to add that as far as the cultural aspect goes, this is where we have the biggest advantage of all. You would think we have the biggest disadvantage because so much money locked up in Hollywood, and so much of it is left-wing money, that you would think, okay, hey, how can we beat that? Well, they beat themselves, because, as I say many times, storytelling is conservative. Storytelling is about individuals. James Bond does not confront the supervillain armed with a strongly worded letter from the United Nations, and then he doesn't drive off in a Prius at a reasonable speed. That doesn't happen, because that's not storytelling. Matt Damon and Jamie Foxx, these giant gun control advocates, make their living by being guys who shoot guns and kill bad guys, hundreds of them, and escape with a girl in a fast car, making a lot of noise and burning a lot of carbon. And they must hate it, but it's true. So storytelling belongs to us. It can't, and it has to be us. You can't tell stories about committees. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about committees. Even if you're doing a story about what a committee did, you will find a way to pick an individual. Football team, for example, is a committee. And you can tell the story of a football team, which is telling the story of a committee, but you're not telling the story of everybody on that football team. You're not telling 40 stories. You're picking 2 people or 3 individuals on that team, and you're using them to tell the story about their committee. So we have to get in the movie business, we have to get in the media business, and we have to basically continue to do what the left is doing, except reverse the villains. This is the problem. They make conservatives the villains. It used to be that they're going to blow up the world because they're Muslim terrorists or communists. Now they're financial guys on Wall Street who want to nuke the Federal Reserve in order to run up the price of the Krugerrand or some nonsense like that. You get the idea. So we got that cultural thing to do, and then finally, we have one other thing I think to do, and this is the one with the quickest returns, I think. And that is we've got to immediately recruit not just new politicians, an entirely different species of people into politics. And I think finally the situation is bad enough that we can pull that off. I think what we basically have to do is say, if you want the job, you can't have it. And if you don't want the job, it's yours. We have to basically treat politics now as jury duty, because the people that go into politics are people who are not successful on their own. They're lazy, or they're stupid, or they're both. And they want money and power, but they don't want to work for it, so they get themselves elected, and then they stay there forever, and then my good friend the Honorable this, and wined and dined, and guests show up at their door, and they travel in jets down to fact-finding missions to Aruba. And who would want to give up a life like that? They're little people, and they go up there to increase their power and to write laws because it makes them feel big. And then we have to solve this problem, and the way we solve this problem is we have to find people who don't want to go. We have to find people who not only don't want to go, we have to find people who really, on some fundamental level, can't go. They cannot do it. We will know we'll have the right people when somebody says, I simply cannot go and be a representative in Washington for 2 years because I am not going to be away from my family that long. And if I do that, then my business is going to fall apart. I simply cannot take the time for 2 years in public service. Those are the people we have to get. We have to get them. We need them. And we're going to have to convince them that it is now not a question of whether you want to go or whether you can go. We have to appeal to them on the same level that we would appeal to soldiers. And for the exact same reason. We're going to say to them, we have to hold this hill. And if we don't hold this hill, then we're going to die, and the people back home are going to die. If we do hold this hill, we may still die, but they'll live, and some of us may live too. But that's how we got to be that serious about it. We have to get not new candidates. We talk about we find some new candidates. No. We saw 16 people up there on the Republican debates, right? Wasn't it 16 when we got started? 16 individuals. I had a line I liked very much on the last right angle. And that line was simply this: having a lot of depth on your bench doesn't help much if the people on the bench can't play basketball, right? You can have a big bench full of young people, and if none of them can play basketball, then a deep bench is not only not a benefit, it's a hindrance. It's preventing you from getting people who can play basketball. So we saw 16 people up there go for the nomination, and we ended up with Donald Trump. And we ended up with Donald Trump because Donald Trump was the only one of them that actually fought back. I'm quite convinced that this is the only reason. He's the only person up there who fought and said what people knew to be true and didn't seem to care. He fought. And that's why we nominated him. But as we find from the debates and everything else, that's not enough. It's one thing to be a fighter, but you got to know what you're fighting for. And you have to want to win more than you want to... you got to want to win. You got to want to win. And he says he wants to win, but if he really wanted to win, he wouldn't let Hillary Clinton run an hour on him with him defending how rich he really is. If he really wanted to win, he would have sat there and said, like I said earlier, your favorite color is blue. She's going to say it's red. What are you going to do? Mr. Trump, your favorite color, you say you're all blue, but your favorite color is actually red. Trump should say, actually it's blue, but whatever makes you happy. And that's the end of it. Go back and attack her again. But he's not doing it. He can't do it. He's not capable of it. So we have to find politicians who aren't politicians. And to me, that I don't know if that means a new political party, but it does mean that I think that we're gonna have to do the one thing I said would save the Republican Party. The one thing that I thought would get people elected without question, get them elected. So let's just assume it's a new political party for the time being, just for a moment. And let's just assume a couple of caveats here. If I was designing a political party to win back American freedom, I would have to find the kind of people that don't want to go. The country's destroyed by people who want the perks of politics, and so we have to destroy them. And the way we destroy them is by finding good men and women who don't want to go. Okay? Who don't want to go. Once we find people that don't want to go, then we've got to start. And then the next thing we have to do is we have to tell them this is how it's going to work. This is how it's going to work. Anything that you've done in your past that is detrimental to you or your family or your loved ones or your business, anything that you may have said or done is going to come out. It's going to come out. And you're going to have the strength and love of country. You're just going to have the raw patriotism to stand in front of people before you run for office and say, here are the things that I've done, and I'm not proud of them, and it's not fun to talk about them, but here they are. I cheated on my wife, and I did this, and I had a drinking problem, and I evaded my taxes, and all of it. You just lay it out. Lay it out. And then you basically say the same thing every time. Every candidate basically says the same thing every time. I understand if you think this is disqualifying. I don't blame you one bit. However, you will never see me here on this stage denying something that is true because I've just told you everything that they could possibly find out about me. I've just told you everything that I would normally otherwise lie about. I've just told you everything that can be used against me. So you know the worst about me because I just told you. So there's never going to be a moment where I'm going to be standing here going, no, I don't know who that woman is, or I never did that, or I never sent or received classified email on my server. I just told you what I did. That kind of an appeal to honesty, people will, it's my belief that American people would fall down in a faint and wake up in love if you had that kind of honesty and that kind of respect for them. Here are the things that they are going to use against me. I'm not proud of any of this, but here it is. You're hearing it from me, and there's nothing I'm leaving out. So here we go. They don't have any control over me, and they don't have any ability to blackmail me. They don't have any ability to influence me. Nothing. I'm going to be my own person, and I'm going to represent the congressional district of this state, and that's all I'm going to do. And here's the kicker. Here's the one. This is the knockout blow. You say that the policy of this party is that there will not be re-election to the same office, period. That will be the end of the Democratic Party. That will be the end of all of these corrupt bastards. I bet you anything I could put together an agenda that would have 85 to 90% of the population of the United States behind it. It's not easy, but it can be done. And if your lead-off promise was to say both to progressives and to conservatives, and here's where we get to the crux of the issue, which I'll close on in a minute. But if you basically say to the American people that this party has a policy, and the policy is that no one is reelected to the same office, what does that mean? Well, you want term limits? Here's your term limits. How many terms are you going to be allowed to serve? 1 term. Really? Just 1? Yes, 1 term. Why? Because I can't afford to be away from my family and my business any longer than that. That's why. Well, there must be some reason why you wouldn't do a 2nd term if you're being successful. And then the response to that would be, if I'm successful in my 1st term, it's because I'm bringing to Washington the problems that I left behind. By the time I seek re-election, my expertise is 2 years out of date. And if I seek it again, then it's 4 years out of date. Then it's 6 years out of date. And I become less and less affected, and I become more and more seduced by this power that seduces everybody. We're not any better than anybody else. We're not claiming that we're moral and the opposition isn't. We're simply saying that since we know power corrupts, we're going to minimize our exposure to it. Look at it as like a reactor. Think of it as like guys going in to clean up Chernobyl. How much time can we get these guys in and out of there and not have it kill them? And I think the answer is 2 years is about the minimum. And furthermore, now, if you say to the American people, look, we're not seeking re-election for the same office. None of us are going to do a 2nd term. Well, why? Well, because, first of all, we don't want to be here. Secondly, and much more importantly, we figure, unlike the Democrats, we feel that in a nation of 330 million people, we can find 535 of them at any given time who know what they're doing. And we don't think that finding 535 total people in a population of 330 million people is a particularly big trick. We think it should be fairly straightforward, frankly. This idea of this government was that the citizens would govern themselves, and we've seen what happens now with a professional political class, and it's the same thing as an aristocracy, and they have the same perks as an aristocracy. So we either go back to basics or we do something else, or we collapse. But the only people that are going to stop this, the only people that are going to pay off debts, the only people that are going to face the music financially, the only people that are going to deal with all this stuff are people who are not susceptible to pressure because they know in advance that they're not coming back. They are, in fact, the untouchables. Think about what happens with a congressman. A congressman goes to Washington. He spends his first year being amazed and kind of blown away by the fact that he's a congressman. He has an idea, but he doesn't ever really know just how much butt kissing goes on there. He's got no idea for the sudden reverence that's sent for him and how doors open for him. He's just a regular guy maybe, and now he's just crates of his favorite scotch are appearing on his doorstep overnight, and he's getting bowed and scraped, and he's being wined and dined with big people and celebrities and blah, 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 and he can feel the tendrils of power around him and the levers and all the rest of it. And so he spends his first year in Washington getting kind of acclimated and has got a bunch of things he wants to do. And then he spends most of his 2nd year in Congress trying to raise money for his 3rd year in Congress. And if he does that, then he'll do a 3rd year, which is removed, 3 years from his expertise. And then in year 4, he's going to start raising money for year 5. That's how it works. With representatives, senators do the same thing with a 6-year lifespan, and governors and presidents with a 4. There's never been a president that I'm aware of that accomplished anything in his 2nd term, not one. Every one of them that really got it done in the 1st term, and the 2nd term for everybody from Reagan and even Clinton, Obama. Even if you're doing horrible things, you're not as effective in your 2nd term. Just say no. Walk away. Have some honor and some integrity. And so we have to find people that are ready to do that. We have to find people. We don't have to find a lot of them. See, this is the good news. We don't have to find a lot of them. we have to find 535 people who are ready to go and spend 2 years or 6 years in order to destroy power, not to gain it, not to become more powerful, and not to become more influential. We have to find people who are willing to go in order to become less powerful and less influential, because they're going to be getting government out of our lives, and they're going to destroy laws rather than make them. They're just going to chew them up like a weed whacker. We're just going to go through the code, and we're just going to find anything that doesn't look like first-degree murder or did this person pour mercury into the river. And if it's not something like that, then we're going to just simply repeal it. That's what our legislation is going to be. We're going to repeal legislation. We're going to pare this thing down. How do you influence people like that? Well, you influence politicians by telling them we're going to reelect you and you're going to get to continue in this magic kingdom. And then they flatter them by saying, oh, you're doing good for the public, and the public really needs a man like you, and people are a woman like you, and people just believe it, and the longer they stay, the worse they get. So it would be our party's policy that there is no reelection to the same office. Now, with that said, you keep all of those advantages. You don't have any new disadvantages, but you can say if a person was spectacularly successful as a representative, then they can run for senator. If they're a senator, they can run for governor. If they're a governor, they can run for president. But they cannot be reelected to the same office, because if they're running for senator, they're essentially starting from the same kind of place. I'm not even sure about that, to be honest with you. We might need a term off in between, but in any event, something like that. And then you would really genuinely have the interest and the attention of the American people. You would have their attention. If you went to the American people and said, we are a political party of people that don't want to be politicians, and we are going to Washington, and we'd like to get out of Washington as fast as we possibly can, and our job is to go and make the government as small as it'll be and still do the essential things that only the government can do, and not a penny more than that. You get a lot of attention for that. And this is the final point I'll make tonight, because I'm still batting these ideas around. And this is the part that's going to be very tough to swallow for, in the beginning anyway. But I've given this a great deal of thought. We are going to have to do this with progressives. Hang on now. What do I mean by do this with progressives? The last weeks, well, certainly since we've had these two nominees, the last months and weeks of this election, there's one phrase that's been in my head, and it's just terrifying to me, because I know it's true. And that phrase is, people get the government they deserve. I fundamentally believe that people get the government they deserve. So why are we in such trouble? Because we're getting the government that we deserve. We picked the two worst people in America, in my opinion. And this is what we deserve. Kind of have to come to grips with this, I think. I'm trying to. So why did we deserve this? Why do we deserve such terrible candidates? There's nobody who thinks this is like wonderful. How do we... What did we do morally and ethically in order to deserve this? And I think the answer is we simply fought without listening. And we got deeper and deeper and deeper into our trenches, and we demonized the other people more and more and more. And so the more we demonized them, the more their demons decided to come to the surface. And now we've got a battle of demons and a battle of the most unpopular people in the history of the country running for the presidency. The two most unpopular politicians who ever walked the earth, in terms of their negative numbers, those are our choices. Now, there's got to be some reason why those are our choices. We can't blame it on Trump or Clinton or rhinos or cucks or any of this stuff. There's a reason why these candidates are so venal and disliked, and the reason is because we constantly make this fight more and more bitter. And every day and every week we do something more to alienate the people who are our countrymen, who we might sit on the same side of the field on when they're playing Florida State. People who, we have a lot in common with in a lot of different ways, but we have just taken this country and we just split it down the middle, and every year it gets worse. That's why we, as a country, deserve what we're getting, because we've been at war with each other for a long time. Now, I can say and believe that the progressives started this war, but again, I'm just doing something else. I'm just doing something to make the problem worse. When I say something like that, I'm doing something to make the problem worse. So I'll just let you guys have the final nugget here, and then I'm going to get back to work for the night. When I say we have to work with progressives, I want to be crystal clear about something. We do not give up any of our principles because our principles are all we have. When I say work with the progressives, I don't mean compromise with the progressives. I don't mean become more progressive. I don't mean become more of a rhino. I don't mean move to the center. I don't mean any of that. I don't mean any of that at all. At all. I think the reason we can win this thing is because we take what we have been calling conservative values, which work, but what we haven't done, at least systematically as a party, and Donald Trump actually has done a lot of this, what we haven't done is we have not gone to the issues that the progressives went on, because we think the progressives are wrong. And the progressives are wrong about how to solve a problem, but they're not wrong about the problem. And that is the thing that we simply cannot forgive or understand. We simply cannot accept it. We cannot accept it. That, what is that sound? Something popping. Maybe it's the mic. It's probably the drone. But seriously now, here's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Progressives are winning because people are fundamentally good. And American people are fundamentally good. And progressives have convinced people that their natural goodness should be channeled into the left because the left does more moral activities, that they're moral, and that the Republicans and the conservatives are just interested in themselves. We have not made the case for self-interest being in the best interest of everybody. That's why I'm doing the first 5 videos I'm doing on economics, but that's a little mini whirlpool in the giant rapids and river. Somebody told me once, Mark Masters, I want to say, who owns Radio Network. I'm pretty sure he said once, many years ago, 2005, he said, Ronald Reagan didn't come to save us from liberals. He came to save us from crony capitalists and from mercantilists. Reagan came to save us from the people that makes liberalism possible. Liberalism and progressivism is a revolt against injustice. It's a revolt against perceived injustice. Many cases, like the Black Lives Matter thing, the injustice is not what they're making it out to be. It is particularly blown out of proportion in order to achieve a political goal. And as I said before, if it turns out that 4% of your black fatalities are coming from policemen and 96% are coming from other blacks, to say that Black Lives Matter's problem is being assassinated by policemen is nonsense. And I'm 100% right by that. 100% right. But we have to accept the fact that whether we like it or not, there is, in fact, mistreatment or at least biased treatment, and we have got to get to this issue. This is very important. If we could find a conservative, listen to this now, because this I think is the whole argument right here. If we could find a conservative solution to progressives' problems, then we will be just dandy. Think about that very carefully, because I genuinely think that's the thing that this country's been missing and why we've been so divided and why this country gets just more and more torn up and everything else. I have no doubt at all that James Comey, one of the things that was given him was, well, you can't have Donald Trump run the country area, blah, blah, blah. Fine, it's past that now. We have to be able to look at what the progressive social goals are, and we have to find a way to make them happen to the degree that they are an actual problem. And many of the things that the progressives talk about are actual problems. And some of the things that they talk about are not problems. And so that leads me to my final statement about this thing here that I've been thinking about, and that's this. How do you compromise with people like this who we've been so much at war with? How do we compromise with people who we've been demonized with? How do we do this? How do we do it? You know, nobody wants to surrender, and we all have our pride, and that pride is causing us this destruction of this country. It's pride. It's pride in my team. It's pride in their team. It's this ability to just war with each other and break up families and break up marriages and break up lifelong friendships because of different politics. And we've just let it go on. And if we're going to stop it, we have to understand something. And I got this piece of wisdom from Adam Baldwin, who is an actor who many of you know. Adam Baldwin's one of the smartest guys I ever met. And he told me very early, I want to say 2008 or so, he said, Bill, when you're arguing with people, you have to give them honorable ground to retreat to. I said, well, that sounds good. What do you mean by that? And he said, if you don't want to fight them to the death, and you don't, if you're in actual combat, I don't have to tell combat veterans this, and certainly don't have to tell World War II veterans this, that if you're given a choice of storming a ridge where there are Japanese machine gun nests and you have to take that ridge, it'd be better to get the Japanese to surrender than it would be to have to take the ridge by force. Can we all agree that that would be better for our guys and better for their guys as well? Right, so how do you get people to surrender? Well, you can get people to surrender. You can get people to surrender by giving them honorable ground to retreat to. If you tell them that if you surrender, we're gonna chop your limbs off and we're gonna eat your babies, then they're gonna fight to the last man, and they would be idiots not to. But if you treat people who are surrendering or at least give them honorable grounds to retreat to, the way that Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain treated the surrendering Confederates when he took one of the rebel armies surrendered, and Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, hero of Gettysburg, basically these beaten Confederates are just staring at the ground, walking forward to throw their flags and their weapons down, and they're just beaten. That's all there is to it. They're beaten, and the Union guys beat them through whatever you want to say, through sheer brute force, whatever. The Confederates were beaten. And that was a time after all of this bloodshed and after all of this rancor, that was a time when if you ever wanted to rub it in on these Johnny Rebs, this was the time to crow loud. And Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain had his men snap to attention, and he made those men stand at rigid attention as these rebel soldiers marched past them and laid down their weapons. And that act is exactly what I'm talking about. Now, if you think that means that I'm going to sweet talk the progressives into surrendering everything that they believe in, that's not going to happen. I'm not that naive or that stupid. What I can say to them is say, look, you see needs that we don't see. And we do tend to take our independence for granted because we're capable people. We tend to assume that other people should be as capable as we are, and they should be able to help themselves, but they're not as capable as we are, and we understand that, or at least we're starting to. So a lot of the points you raise are good points. A lot of people are hurting who need to be helped, and we're ready to go that far with you. However, now we have to ask ourselves an important question. Do we really want to help these people, or do we want to feel good about helping these people? These are not the same things, necessarily. If we really want to help them, that might be one path, but if we want to feel good about appearing to help them, that's an entirely different thing. I don't think you'd find any reasonable progressive who would come out right out and say, oh, I don't really care about the poor or the whatever. The main thing is that I look good about it. That's why they behave the way they do, but they would never admit it because they're actual people too. So if you got together with them and said, listen, how about if we do this in a sort of a working relationship? We're going to take the give and play of a courtroom to try and get to the truth. So why don't you consider yourselves attorneys for the defense? We'll consider ourselves attorneys for the prosecution. And here's how this will go. We can agree together that there are people in this country who need help, and they need government help. There's nowhere else for them to go. We're willing to make that concession. You should be willing to make the concession that the government should be the last place they go because being treated by your church or your family is better than being treated by a stranger. Can we agree on that? Yes, or has we already made some progress? Now we can talk about we have some resources and we need to spend them most effectively. Can we agree on this? Yes. Okay. Can we agree that resources aren't unlimited? Can we understand that if we continue to borrow like this, the country's going to fall apart? Yes. Okay. Well, then how do we best spend these resources? And then if you really want to win this argument, because this is the part I think is just absolute genius if I do say so myself, then you say to these progressives, I'll tell you what, how about if we were to find a little more money by taking it away from the Defense Department? If we were taking it away from Defense Department and put it into some of these social programs, would you be willing to work with us in terms of making sure that that money is spent as effectively as possible. Would you be willing to do that? I think I have a hard time imagining how you would say no. You basically say, we are willing to talk about giving up some things and freeing up some money. Let me finish this, guys, before your heads explode. We'd be willing to look at that. In exchange for this, you have to be willing to make sure that there's no waste and that there's no fraud. You don't want waste and fraud, do you? Because if you want waste and fraud, you're not a good person. You're an evil person. You're taking it off the top. Okay, yes, we agree. Now, where would I get the money from defense? I'd get the money from defense. I would save a great deal of money from defense, and we would have a much better armed forces, because I would do one simple thing, and that is I would get rid of cost-plus bidding on weapons systems. It's just that simple. It's just save you trillions of dollars. For those of you that don't know, most of the defense purchases are on a cost-plus basis. And as all of these, I know aerospace better than I know the other services, but it's true in all of them. In the 50s, well, all through the 40s really, maybe even earlier, the 50s and the 60s, there were probably at least 10 major aeronautical companies that were top-level, world-level companies, and they were in competition with each other. And I'm not going to have an exclusive list, but some of their names are Douglas, North American, Rockwell, McDonnell, Lockheed, Boeing, Northrop, and a bunch others. Now, as time goes by and as these weapon systems get more expensive, these companies begin to merge, and they merge. And McDonnell and Douglas become McDonnell Douglas. And then they become Boeing McDonnell Douglas, and Lockheed Northrop merge, and Grumman and all the rest. So now we're down to 2 or 3 of these things. And since there's only 2 or 3 of them, and since they're so enormous, they need huge sums of money to do what they need to do. And because politicians allow themselves to be paid for and bought at the expense of the American people, we now have something called cost-plus procurement. Now think about this, folks, because I don't think I'm getting this wrong. Just think about this as a rational, conservative person here. The way we buy a weapon system like the F-35, for example, is we do it through cost plus. Well, what does that mean? It means that we're going to pay Lockheed. We're going to pay the Lockheed conglomerate what it costs to build the planes, plus some number, let's just say off the top of our head, 6%. Okay, that's their profit. So we, the government, are going to pay all of their costs. They're going to list for us every dime that they spent on these planes and these programs, and we're going to pay that, plus we're going to pay 6% or 8% or 10% or whatever. Let's just say it's 6%. In addition, and that's going to be the profit for the company. Now think about this for a second. If you are getting a percentage, if the company's profit is expressed as a percentage of the total amount of money spent, what do you think that does to the motivation of the company? I mean, how stupid do you have to be? It means that if Lockheed is getting a percentage of what it cost, we get all of the cost back, plus we get a percentage of that number, then don't you think that the Lockheed executives would not only be smart, but in fact be bound, morally and legally bound to their boards to make this weapon system cost as much as possible, because our percentage, that's the plus in the cost plus, is derived over the final cost. So the bigger the cost is, the more money we make. The bigger the cost is, the more money we make. We get a 6% piece of a small pie or a 6% piece of a big pie. Let's have a 6% piece of the big pie, and let's see how we can make the pie as big as possible and make the weapon system as expensive as possible. It's madness. And it couldn't exist anywhere other than in a world of professional politicians. If the American people were doing this kind of business, and we had citizen legislators, the way we're supposed to have, then we would buy F-35s the same way we would buy an addition to our house, or if somebody wanted to put a porch out back. If we really had the American people and citizens buying F-35s as the Congress, they would buy it the same way they'd buy an extension to their house, or they'd buy a back porch. In other words, they would put up on the market and they advertised the fact that we need this work done, and they would take bids, and they would look at the bids, and maybe they'll throw out the least expensive bid, maybe they'll throw out the most expensive bid. They would look at these things very carefully, and they would try to determine what is the most quality we can get for the smallest amount of money. That's a sliding scale judgment, changes all the time, but basically that's the incentive now. How do we get the most for spending the least? It's our money, it's my money. I don't want to give a contractor a dime more than I need to, but at the same time, I don't want to underpay the guy so that the deck falls apart. So where is that sweet spot? Anyway, you've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 people competing now. And if some guy says he can do it for $9,000, I can call a guy who I think's work is better and say, hey, this guy said he's doing it for $9,000. Can you beat that? He says, no, $9,000. $8,999 sold. You do better work. And then you get competition. And then what happens if you're in competition? If you're in competition, you buy the F-35 through competition. So instead of us paying a hunk of money to these companies to develop these fighters, we say, hey boys, you want a big contract that's worth billions and billions and billions of dollars? Then dig into your pockets, because you've got some pockets, and make the best fighter jet you can. And in a year, we're going to meet out in Nellis Air Force Base, or Edwards Air Force Base, and we're going to take your airplane and your airplane and your airplane and your airplane and your airplane, and we're going to ring them out. We're going to find out which one of them does the job better. Some will be better in some areas than others, but we're going to find out who the best all-around fighter is, and all of the money is going to that person. And this is the key. If we say that we're going to buy 500 F-35s and we say that they're going to cost $300 million each, whatever, then we write a contract that says that we will receive 400 of these aircraft at the cost of $300 million each and not a penny more. Now what does that do to incentives? Every time there's a cost overrun, it's coming out of their pocket, not the American taxpayers. It's coming out of their pocket, not mine, not ours, not the American taxpayers. Now, defense contractors have a since they're competing against other defense contractors, they got to put their best product out there. I think they do that anyway. I'm certainly willing to give them the benefit of that doubt, but they understand that they can't make this thing too expensive, because if they make it too expensive, we'll go with somebody else. And so now we have competition driving the price down and the quality up, just like everything else. And then we say, hey, where's our jets? Where's our 500 jets? Yeah, well, they're costing a lot more than we thought. And we simply look at them and say, you know whose problem that's not? Mine. That's whose problem it's not. It's not my problem. It's your problem. If you underbid this, that's your problem. We have a legal contract with you, you see. We, the government, now have a legal contract with you, and you will deliver these aircraft, what you swore you would do. You said you made a promise. Here it is in writing. You will either deliver them on time and on budget, or we'll sue you. And we'll fine you. And next thing you know, you're getting better aircraft for a fraction of the cost. A fraction of the cost. Somebody just said something which is why this whole thing fits together and why it's not just, governed. Governed says, he's being facetious, obviously, when I'm talking about getting rid of cost plus. He says, but the manufacturing plant is in my state. Yes, of course it is. So why do we have cost plus? Why? How did we get a law this stupid? We got a law this stupid because of horse trading from professional politicians who want to remain there for the rest of their lives, who say, I will vote for this ridiculous, asinine, expensive, treasonous, ridiculous, absurd thing that you're proposing, which is cost plus in the great state of California, because that's where we're going to build them, in exchange for which you will agree to vote for this other god-awful, insane, nutcase scam job that I'm trying to set up in Florida. Deal? Deal. This way, we're bringing jobs to the community, and I'm the guy who brought the F-35 program to wherever the F-35 program is, and therefore re-elect me because I brought jobs to the community. See? I brought all these jobs to the community. See? You've bankrupted the country. You've hurt our defense. You put our soldiers and our sailors and our airmen and Marines' lives at risk. You don't care about that. You just want to be re-elected. Well, that's not a problem for us because we don't get re-elected. See? See how easy it is? Pretty simple, really. All of these things are things that have been, these are things that have to happen together. And you can't just do one of them, and you can't just do some of them. You have to do them all, and you have to do them all simultaneously, and you have to understand that you are talking about a 3 or 4 decade project, which in broad terms means messaging to young people in a way that makes these values that we used to call conservative, I'm not going to call them conservative anymore, American values, constitutional values, we have to market them to young people in a way that makes them cool and exciting and rebellious and hip and sexy and fun. All of those things. Because these people that we're trying to beat now, these progressive communists, they're not fun or sexy or anything. They're just weenies. So we have to be more appealing to young people. So we have to win young people's messaging, and we have to get involved with people like Turning Point USA and give them the ammunition so that their kids can go out and do the work, because now they've got the cool arguments, they've got the good-looking sweaters, they've got the good-looking hoodies, they got whatever they need to do, they've got. So number one, you go straight to the kids. You outflank this current generation of socialists and just leave them behind. Have you pitch to the younger brothers and sisters saying, your older brother and sister is a loser, he's 38 years old, he's still living in your basement, you're not that dumb. Let's have a talk. You want to do the right thing, we want to do the right thing too. And so that's number one, you go to the kids. Number two, you have to develop an alternative to the news media, because if we continue to depend on the news media, we're going to lose. We will not correct them. We will not change them. They're not going to change. They are left-wing, progressive, Marxist organs, and they will always be that way. And the good news is that nobody's watching these things anymore. Nobody reads newspapers anymore. Nobody watches the evening news anymore. Everything is turning into being more and more fractured. All of the megatrends are on our side. That's why I'm so optimistic. If we were fighting the megatrends, then I'd be terrified, but I'm not. All of the trends and the megatrends and the big issues are moving exactly in our direction. Decentralized, non-hierarchical, information-based, local, fast, quick, cheap. Boom, we're in business. So you got to get the news. You can't change the news media, so you have to present an alternative news media, which is a better news media, because they are getting the footage in real time on their cell phones, and then it just gets distributed through the internet, and we don't even have to set that up. That's already in place. People start getting their news from the internet. And as I said before, the key to the journalism angle is, if it didn't happen on tape, it didn't happen. On tape, obviously. I mean, if it's not recorded in audio or especially video, it didn't happen. You can have transcripts of anything. You can have transcripts of Obama describing how he murdered 8 children. It doesn't matter. People will either read it, most people won't, and if they read it, most people will doubt it, and if they read it and believe it, it's still not going to have the emotional impact of watching him actually eat children, right? So it's got to be on video, or else it doesn't count. These are the cards. These are the rules. If you don't like it, go home. So we got to be able to have we have to encourage everybody to be journalists and have those cameras ready, and we've got to especially mobilize young conservatives to start pointing this thing out. So if you're in a class at the University of Minnesota, where I was, and they're giving you a lot of grief because you're a Republican, then get out there and don't break any laws, because they're going to be looking for us to break any laws. Follow the dean around, follow the teacher around, bring in the cell phone, record some of the things they say. Just stay on them and watch what happens. Yeah, picture it didn't happen. That's exactly right, Northcott Michael. That's the phrase that those crazy wacky kids use, and it's the reality of the world. You can either accept it or not, but it's the reality. Picture it didn't happen. If there wasn't audio of Trump, then this whole thing with the language about the women would be a non-issue. If there was a video about Hillary Clinton doing the things that we saw her do, then we'd be in a real different situation. As I said, the great example of that is her falling into the limousine on 9/11 when there was no news cameras there. There were just people with cameras. So you got to get the news out to people in a way that is at least competitive with what we understand the mainstream media to be today. We're just going to build a news media. It's going to be a better news media, because it's not going to be Johnny Danger with Action 6 News down on the corner, breaking story now. No. By the time man on the street reporter gets down there, it's finished. It's done. There was a large fight here earlier at the mall. Well, we know there was a large fight there, Channel 7 News team, because we had the fight up online 2 hours ago when the fight was actually happening. We were live streaming the fight with commentary. See? You're done. You're finished. And we don't have to push people in that direction. They're pushing us in that direction. That's great for us. So we have to go to the kids. We have to go to to the information and the press. We have to go to the culture. We have to start making movies where people identify with the values that we like, openly identify with them. I did this to make some money and everybody did well. Whatever the case may be, we got to get pop culture footprint. And then the two final things are we have to basically recruit people who don't want to be politicians and get them to agree that it's in the interest of their country and their children and their grandchildren. You have to go to this horrible place for 2 years or 4 or 6. You just have to, because your country depends on you. And if you don't go, we're going to lose the country. So you have to go. It's jury duty. People who look at politics as jury duty, those are the people we need to get. And I don't care what their background is. I really don't. If they're out there in the world dealing with absolute issues, doesn't matter to me whether they're Republican or Democrat or not. If they're actually dealing with actual issues, that's who we want. So there's that. And then the final thing is, as I said, we've got to be willing to compromise our approach without compromising any of our values. There are values that I'm not going to compromise. I'm not going to compromise freedom. I'm not going to compromise freedom of choice. I'm not going to compromise freedom of speech. I'm not going to compromise the Second Amendment. I'm not going to compromise anything in the Constitution. I'm just going to go to the Constitution. And if a progressive says it needs to be updated, I'm going to ask him why. And if he tells me why it needs to be updated, then I will either say, here's why it doesn't, here's how we can do it within the bounds of the Constitution. And if he makes a spectacular case, which hasn't happened yet, but if he does, then I'll say, yeah, you know what, you have a really good point there. Let's make that constitutional amendment happen. You've got to be prepared to deal with these people. And we have to take the lead. We have to be brave enough to take the lead and say, listen, this isn't a surrender on our part, and we're not asking you to surrender. This is something different. This is something smarter. We're wondering if we can't take your expertise and our expertise and fix all of these problems. We're wondering if we can't apply sensible, financially sound, reasonable, sustainable solutions to the problems that you've been talking about forever and actually genuinely help these people. Are you happy with how the government's been helping them? Do you think, if you're an advocate for the poor, are you impressed with how the poor have been raised out of poverty over the last 60, 70 years? Are you one of those people? Are you a Black Lives Matter guy? Do you think that things have gotten better and better and better over the last years, or do you think they've gotten worse? Because if they've gotten worse, then something is going wrong on your side. We can help with that. And then the next thing you know, we have people cooperating, not agreeing, but not murdering each other. And we get candidates who we can be proud of and not people who we have to say, I've got to vote for this person because the other person's even worse. Whoever wins this election, it's not over, but whoever wins the election, I do not know how they're going to govern the country. Neither one of them will have any legitimacy with the other half at all, none. Hillary Clinton has no legitimacy with me. She's genuinely not my president, and Barack Obama was, as much as I didn't like it, he was my president, because at least Barack Obama didn't obviously break any laws and commit any felonies, not directly in front of my face. I'm sure he did. But Hillary Clinton has broken the social compact. She's basically said, I'm above the law. And my response to that is, well, if you're above the law, then I'm above the law too. We're either both going to obey the law, or we're both going to be above the law. But if you think I'm going to obey the law just so I can do what you tell me to do and give you all of your money, give you all of my money, no, not going to happen. So if this revolution is going to have to be a revolution of ideas, and it's going to have to happen completely legally, because the one great threat will be that they will use what they used against Dinesh D'Souza. Anything. They will get anything. Dinesh D'Souza committed some incredibly trivial, minor campaign finance violation. He wasn't even aware of what he was doing. He didn't get any financial gain out of it or any influence out of it. He just lent somebody some money. They spent it on politics. And he got 6 months in a overnight facility and psychiatric treatment, court-mandated psychiatric treatment. People would do $800,000 worth of just fraud and graft and benefit enormously financially, and they would get a slap on the wrist. But he got sent to jail for 6 months because he's a conservative, and we have to understand that's not going to change. So we have to play by the rules, and we have to be very careful. But we will beat these people. We will. We just have to have the courage to start with a clean sheet of paper and understand that this is not about conservatives or or Republicans or Democrats or liberals. This is about Americans being able to live more or less in peace with each other, with a government that listens to what they say, with laws that apply to everybody, which means they apply to conservatives, and it also means they apply to the police, and it also means they apply to the rioters. It means it applies to everybody. And it needs to have somebody who can defend these positions with articulation. It needs a radical reapproach to the whole idea of politics. The only way I can see citizen legislators actually doing what they're supposed to do is by having them take an oath for no reelection. I think the American people would understand that in a heartbeat. I think you would win 80 to 90% of that, any fight that you're in with that. But you have to explain it, right? I mean, you have to be able to defend it. You got to show people why this is cool. And so that's what I've been thinking about. And I mean to put together a firewall that will, on the morning of November 9th, it's going to drop. It's going to be like a meteor that goes across the sky. And it's going to have one day, really, 2 days lifetime. It's going to happen right when half of the country feels sick to their stomach. And I'm going to need all of you to help me spread that message around. Because that message is going to be for membership, because this is the battleship. It's a battle of ideas and visions, and that's what we do here at this little shop. If it was a battle of something else, then I would ask for your money. But this is where the war is, so if you want to fight for the country, this is where you got to go. This is what the ammunition looks like. One of the things I like to say, I said not too long ago, is the progressives and the left and Hillary and all the rest of that have George Soros, and we've got you. They've got George Soros, and we've got you. And I'd rather have you, frankly. So, there it is. The challenge is going to be to boil all of this down into 3 or 4 minutes. That just is a rocket. But I had thought that that the business and activity and everything would fall off after the election. I'm beginning to realize, no, the day after the election is the day when this thing gets serious. Because this is not the United States of America anymore. It's not. And we're going to have to start with a clean sheet of paper and start getting off out of our own trenches and asking other people to get out of theirs. And I think we can pull it off. And I know we've got to try. So that's the plan. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I was hoping it would be an hour show. I was at hour 42, but it was a pretty good roll there for a while, I think. So, again, those of you who are paying for this message, thank you. You understand exactly what we're talking about and what we're trying to do, and we're very grateful for your vision and your generosity, and for paying for other people's programming, because that's what it's going to take. In any event, I am off the air now. I've got to finish at least one more show before I go to bed, and we're keeping these things coming to you. We want to have some more resources. We can hire staff, and I can get rid of 80% of this stuff and concentrate on the big ideas. But right now, I got to go edit some shows. Thank you very much for joining us. It was number 132. I'll try and get these up online. I know there are 2 or 3 that need to get up on YouTube, so I'll try and take care of that tonight or tomorrow. And by the way, in closing, just so you know, I've been saying we're going to do this for a while, but we were dealing with politics. I'm not talking about politics anymore. We're going to kick the living shit out of these bastards. We're going to really hurt them badly. We're going to really take away their lollipop. And we're going to take away that machine that they built to steal our money for themselves. We're going to kick it to atoms. We're just going to break it down. And no one's going to be leading this charge. We're all going to be leading the charge. We're all going to be in a network, and everything's going to be cool, man. So, thanks for being a part of it, and thanks for letting me, bloviate about this. And I get the feeling that something big's going to come out of this in the not-too-distant future. So, anyway, you guys take care out there. Don't let them get you depressed. I know it's depressing. There's no way not to be depressed, I suppose, but don't let that lead to despair. And for God's sakes, don't let it immobilize you. We're best when we fight. Americans are best when we're best when we're in trouble. And we're in trouble.